Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Today's video is just going to be a vlog about the different stages of building your truck. Mainly on the performance aspect of things, not really aesthetics. So what we'll do is we'll get started and I'll break down 3 different stages of what parts you should need, or what 3 stages you should build your 3 different levels of building your truck. So stay tuned and hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. All right, so to start things off, one thing I wanted to cover was like I said, we'll start in 3 stages. So stage 1, this is what everybody usually wants to do when they first get their 6.7 Cummins and they start talking about deleting it. So stage 1, I was gonna say stock-ish horsepower up to about 500 horsepower. And the range of cost can go anywhere from a little under $1,000 all the way up to say $2,500. And stage 1 is pretty much going to be, tuning your truck, your exhaust, and your EGR delete. So depending on what various tuning company you want to go with, there's multiple out there. I'm not going to name them just for a simple fact that I don't want anybody to get in trouble. But there's many companies out there that offer race-only tunes, so you can pretty much get rid of the the emissions compliant parts of the truck, whether it's the EGR delete, the DPF, things like that. The first thing I did on my truck performance wise was that, and it came in right around $2,400. So there's a lot of people out there that offer these kits for like a one-stop shop, and then you could just piece it together. It's kind of what I did. One thing I do want to cover that not a lot of people think about is when you do your exhaust, you're straight piping your exhaust, there's a lot of plugs on the exhaust that get plugged in for the computer to read whatever, and I highly recommend getting a Shibby kit. I'll put a link in the description below. It's just a bunch of male or female connectors that plug into the empty plugs that are left unattached to anything underneath your frame rail. So there's a lot of, I want to say there's like 12 12 plugs alone that go into your exhaust system. So it provides just a way to cover those up, and it actually prevents it from getting corroded and debris and all that stuff inside of those plug connections if you ever want to revert the truck back to stock configuration. One other thing I want to cover is the EGR delete. It's a block off plate, and it's a couple plates on your exhaust manifold where the EGR itself actually sat, and then on your intake side where the EGR valve opened to let the exhaust gases recirculate right back through the intake. I ran my truck for probably a good 1,000 miles before I actually took all those components off. When you get your tuning, it should just disable that stuff so you don't have to worry about it anyway. And that's something that you can wait to do that. When you delete a truck, you definitely have to put either a DPF delete pipe or just a full turbo back exhaust, because the smoke or the emissions it's going to put out is going to clog up your DPF from the tuning. And when you get your tuner, just make sure your settings are where you need them to be. Like when I first got mine, it was sent to me. It was set on tune 5, which is like the hot tune. And of course, when I first drove it, I got onto it and I was like, holy crap, this thing had a lot more throttle response than what I expected. A couple days later, figuring out how to use it, I went back in there and I switched it back down to like a 2 or a 3. And that's usually where I keep it at nowadays. On the hot tune, you're gonna get a lot of smoke, and I just don't wanna be that guy. So I turn mine down so I don't have that crazy emissions going around. All right, so since we covered stage 1, that's just your basic performance package, or help the truck run better. The next stage I'm going to go into stage 2. This is what I've done to my truck so far. There's a few things I still need to do, but so stage 2, you're looking at 500 to say 600, 650 horsepower, and this is where you start putting in some money into the truck. So I have a low end of $8,000 all the way up to $14,000. The $8,000 is just the parts, really, and $14,000 is if you have somebody else install them. You know, if you're going to pay for labor, you know, working on vehicles, especially diesels, ain't cheap. So when you think about the labor that these things, or just labor in general for automotive, is pretty expensive. Talked to my buddy the other day. I think his shop's charging about $130 an hour. So take it for what it's worth. It's going to vary anywhere from $100 up an hour for labor costs on working on vehicles. So let's get into it. Stage 2. This is in no certain order, and I'll start with what I have. I have a lift pump. That's one thing I don't have, and that's one thing I need to get. For a while, I was dead set on just doing the Fleece drop-in lift pump, but the more I've talked to people, the more I've done some research, I'm just going to go with an external air dog pump when a Beans diesel sunk. So lift pump is always good to, you know, get your fuel rail pressure up and keep that consistent pressure coming to the CP3. Next thing I have is a second gen swap. There's many multitudes of second gen swaps. So I went with the WCFab, love their kit, phenomenal kit. But second gen swap can go anywhere from $1,800 all the way up to $5,000. So it's all up to you what you want, how much you're willing to spend, and what you're going to use it for. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and discuss turbo sizes. That's a whole nother topic. But when you're doing a second gen swap, that's what a lot of people are doing to get power, or they're going to be doing a compound setup. So you can really just compare those together. Second gen swap or compound setup. It's up to the individual and what you're going to use it for. Next thing I have is head studs. You can do the ARP S2000s or 425s, as some people like to call them, or you can just go all out and just do the ARP 625s. So when I gave you a price earlier, I just did the 625s in there because that's what I got. So that's what I threw into the price. Obviously, the clamping force to keep that head down when you're pushing a higher boost with the bigger turbo, especially if you have compounds. So you're compounding that pressure coming out of there, you're going to need some head studs. Next thing I have is trans valve body. It's just a light work on the trans to help it, and for that more clamping force so you can boost up your trans line pressure. Another thing I have on here is gears if lifted. So if you're lifted up like me, 37s, 35s, if not bigger, start looking at gears. You know, a lot of these trucks come with 342s. I think that's the majority of them. You can option out now to 373s and 410s, but not all those trucks have it. I'm just going off strictly what I have, and a 342 is what I got. So the gears are still sitting on the workbench. Truck's going in tomorrow to get started on gears, but that's something you need to consider. Definitely trying to help out your transmission, help out the longevity of the life of the transmission, and just take that load off of there. One thing I do have in here as well is intake horn. I wouldn't say that's really necessary. I have the Banks 4-inch intake horn. Love it. Looks pretty. I mean, I can't really say if it actually made a difference performance-wise, but I did it all at once. I did a second gen swap, the intake horn. So it's kind of hard to tell if it actually did anything. I've already done a dyno run. That was 482 horsepower. I didn't get a torque reading because they're, and like you see in the past videos, that connection was broken. So we'll go back after we get the break-in period of the gears and try it again. Valve springs and push rods are something you're definitely going to want to you're going to need in the stage two section of your build as well. Probably looking at Hamilton springs or Hamilton cams. They have their push rod and valve spring sets. Those are something you're probably going to need so you're not messing up your valves, or mistakenly have a valve kiss your pistons when you're pushing that much boost. So those are some things you need to look at. There's multiple companies that make them. I think Manton and Hamilton are the first ones that come to my mind. Those are definitely a necessary evil that you're going to need. So go ahead and pick yourself up a set of those if you're going to be pushing a higher boost as well. That's one of the things that's on my list of things to do here within the near future. All right, the last part I have is stage 3, and this is going to be anywhere from 600 horsepower to about 850 horsepower. With that being said, this can vary many different ways. I got another cost comparison saying anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, depending on what you want to do. So I only have 3 topics here, and I'll cover each of them, pretty good in depth. I have the first one is a built trans / 48 swap. The second one is a CP3, a stroker pump or a dual CP3, and then injector or injector, just injector nozzles. So I'll cover the first one, built trans. So a lot of shops around here, not around here, but just in general, are getting better with the engineering and the research and development for these 68s. Everybody throws them to the wayside saying, hey, if you're gonna go over this amount of power, I think 700 is what people are saying for these 68s, then you might as well 48 swap it. That's a huge difference in cost if you're gonna do a 48 swap. You can't just bolt the transmission up and go. There's adapter plates you got to redo. There's electronics that have to be configured. There's kits that you have to buy, say the Anteater from Fire Punk or whatever the case may be. I haven't done too much research on the 48 swap because that's not the way I see myself going right now. I see myself just going with a built 68 in the future. I just don't know when that's going to be. And that cost of just a built 68 is $7,500 from the company I'm choosing to go with. And the guy I'm going to go with is DRT Transmissions out of Okmulgee, Oklahoma. He's been pretty popular. A lot of people do know about him. The main reason I'm going with him is because he's local, he's reputable, and he has a good backing. So amongst the Cummins crowd. So that's one thing that's the company I'm gonna go with. Now you start talking 48 swaps. These are obviously a lot more, I guess you say better built. They're a 4-speed transmission. They can hold a lot more power than a 68. So a lot of guys that are doing competition racing, things like that, or just want to beat the piss out of it, are actually going 48 swaps. I personally have never had experiences with the 68 or a built 68, so I can't sit here and say the 68s are the most reliable things ever. From the people I've talked to about a built 68, long as you respect the truck and you drive it like it's a truck and not a sports car, they should last just fine. So like I said, I'll have a difference of opinion when I get one. I just don't know at this point. So what I'm going to choose is going to actually be the built 68. So we'll move on from that. Next thing I want to talk about is the CP3s. So a lot of people like to do the dual fuelers. It's the same cost, I want to say, as a stroker if you're just going to do a stock CP3, 2 stock CP3s. But with your stock CP3s, just know that you're limited at about 3,000 RPM, and that's when your pressure starts to fall off. There's a lot of videos out there about it and how it works, and what the different pressures do and the different configurations. Say if you want to do a Sportsman or a 750 or a 10 mil on top of a stock CP3, you can always do that. My personal belief is the more simple, the more better, right? So if I could just replace my stock CP3, I don't have to worry about running new tubing. I don't have to worry about a wire harness. I don't have to worry about another pulley, a longer belt, more hardware, more bracketry to hook up to my motor. I already have the Banks intake horn. I know it's some kits rub with that intake horn there, and it's just more cluttered. It looks cool, but at the same time, we'll stick with the basics here. Now that they make these stroker kits, that's what I plan on going with. I still don't have my mind made up with what I want to do because I'm still trying to think of the ultimate. I say 800 horsepower daily driver, but I'm going to sit here and tell you that I just don't know 100% that that's it. I would say I'm about 80%. That's where I want to be at, but I know this isn't a race truck. This is going to be my daily driver, eventually my tow rig. So when I talk about a CP3, I'm thinking right now it's going to be a 10 millimeter with some injectors. So I like the idea of just having a single CP3 on the block, ran by the gear set, and to me, that's the best part. Some people are running like dual 10 millimeters, 12 millimeters. I know Turbo Tom's running like dual 14 millimeters. I mean, I think he's running 500% over injectors, but that guy's going to make 2,000 horsepower easy, So there's a lot of different ways you can skin this cat when it comes to mounting those CP3s. So that's a whole other topic. Well, last thing I'm going to cover is injectors. So you can go for a nozzle swap. You can just go for nozzles. You can do the nozzles yourself, or you can send them in to be done. Nozzles are a cheap alternative to doing it. Me personally, I would recommend sending your stock injectors in for the swap rather than just doing the nozzle swap at your house, because there's many things that can go wrong, and trust me, that's not something you want to mess up with how expensive they are. So you can do a reman replacement, or you can just do a whole new set of injectors. There's a whole new set of injectors can run around, I would say $4,500 for like extra G or SNS diesel, whatchamacallit, injectors. Nozzle swap that I've looked at, $1,700, but I'm not 100% sure if that is pretty much like a rebuilt or just a nozzle swap. So I would have to get in contact with the company again and just clarify that. So that's nowhere on my radar to be doing right now. It's going to be later on down the road, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But just to recap, stage 3 is going to be a built transmission or a 48 swap, a CP3, either dual CP3 or a stroker pump, and last but not least, injectors. All right, so those are the 3 different stages that we have covered. The last thing I'm gonna say is anything above that, you probably need to plan it out better, methodical. You're talking, if you're gonna go over that, you're probably gonna be hitting the probably 1,000 horsepower range and who knows what torque. So you probably need to plan that from the start, probably build this truck at once, kind of like what Dirty Max Jack did over with 8 Ball on his channel. He just bought a straight up compound setup, the CP3, the injectors, and just put it all at once. And he's having the transmission built by the guys at Firepunk. So that's a pretty awesome build, pretty in-depth build. So if you want to go anything farther than that, you're probably looking at, doing the bottom end of the motor, rods, pistons, everything. So, all right, everyone, that's going to be it for today's video. So just went over the 3 different stages and how I plan on building the truck, and I think a lot of other people use that same kind of setup. So if you guys have any differences of opinion, let me know. Write it down in the comments. Let me know, say if there's some things you would do different, or if there's other order of things that you think should be done in separate orders. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Still stuck at home, still in quarantine. I'll probably be putting out a lot more content since I'm stuck at home, can't do too much. But truck's gonna be leaving tomorrow. I'm gonna go get the gear swap done, and then we'll have her back, and I'll probably drive around a little bit to get some miles on her so we can get the braking period taken care of. But other than that, that's all I have for today. You guys stay safe. Hopefully you guys like the clip. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next upload.